Hi, Dr. John Alchemy with RateFast. Back again. We're going to be talking today about recognizing realistic settlements in impairment rating and using objective data as the basis of starting settlements and claim settlement discussions. So we've talked at RateFast and in these pod and video casts multiple times about the various elements of impairment rating, some of the techniques that can be used to substantiate impairment ratings, and using more science than art with making determinations in impairment rating. Now, impairment rating is very mechanical, and it's a very objective kind of process for the most part. There are certain body parts in impairment rating that are a little bit more soft, if you will, in the science, such as assigning someone a global assessment functioning score for a psychiatry claim, trying to determine if someone can do their executive functions who've had a head injury, in the memory loss rating in the neurologic chapter, those kinds of things. But for the most part, it's a pretty mechanical, straightforward, and mathematical process, particularly the orthopedic chapters, where we see a lot of California work comp claims, spine, upper and lower extremity. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is we've talked again before about things such as integrity, the bias of treatment burden and how it relates to impairment rating. All of these things can be standardized. Arriving at maximal medical improvement. We did a video podcast on that. What does it mean to watch someone arrive at maximal medical improvement, and how can they be tracked numerically? We've done that. We've talked about that. What we really want to talk about here today is bringing people together when it's time for settlement. And this could be multiple things. It could be a doctor talking to an insurance adjuster. It could be a QME communicating to an attorney. It could be something such as a doctor talking to a patient after having done their impairment report. You typically bring them back, you go over the results, and you try to talk to them about what an impairment report is and why it's been assigned at this value. You have to remember that a lot of people that participate in workers' compensation have a little bit of training, but don't have full expertise in impairment rating. And because of that, we start to have things creep in from the edges that are more subjective and based more on feelings than science or actual findings in the physical exam. And that's really what I wanted to talk today about in this session. And that's about trying to bring reality into a discussion where there may not be a good understanding on the concept of impairment, what makes it up, and what it's really about on a mathematical basis or an objective basis. Remember, the impairment report that is going to win for settlement, or when it goes in front of a judge, or when it goes to the DEU, is that report that is most substantiated. They talk all the time about substantial medical evidence, et cetera, and that's fine. But it's really the report that's best reasoned and has the best data inside of it. We've done a pod video cast on data integrity, something that RateFast has invented and builds into every single report. Basically gives all the stakeholders an understanding of how much data is present, how much is missing. So we have a lot of tools that we use. The problem is that they've just never been organized, and they haven't yet been fully adopted throughout the workers' compensation system. These concepts are building in popularity, and they're building because they remove a lot of the argument and uncertainty around these topics that have never before been defined. When something is not defined or well understood, everyone has their own opinion on what it is and how it should be applied and how it's going to play into settlement. And the role of myself in RateFast is to remove that uncertainty, show a clear path forward, and show that the rating that is provided is reproducible and well-reasoned based on science and the AMA Guides 5th edition in California. That's really what we're all about. And if you can deliver a report and have simple and clear reasons as to the findings of that report, be it the impairment rating, the future care, the apportionment, Alvarez-Guzman, the pain add-on, all of these things, if they can be standardized and put into an algorithm or a formula that you can simply show the stakeholders, this is how we do it. This is what the AMA guide says. This is how the AMA guides values these things. Here's the table, here's the intervals, here are the vectors, if you will, the measurements. And if you can show them that, it really saves a lot of arguing and beating around the bush and having a case go before a judge needlessly, or having a patient get an attorney needlessly, dragging these things out needlessly, elevating costs needlessly. All this can be avoided if you can get a decent understanding on the impairment report, why it's accurate or inaccurate, if you will. And the reason I say this is because a lot of communication that happens between stakeholders, insurance companies to doctors, doctors to attorneys, doctors to judges, or judges trying to understand reports and make a ruling on the legality of the benefits and the rating and the settlement, all of these things. A lot of this can be avoided if only there is some clear understanding on how things are done. Probably the biggest problem we face in talking about this is, again, not having literacy in the impairment reports and not understanding what they are. I've talked before in some of the other podcasts and video casts about people just thinking that, oh, they received a lot of treatment, their impairment must be higher, and vice versa. They didn't get much treatment, their impairment can't be this high. And I don't think we really understand how much this kind of thinking throws in delay into settlement, dissatisfaction to all the stakeholders in the process, particularly employers and the injured workers, of whom we've created the whole work comp system for in the first place. So the main thing I want to impress here is that if you have an accurate report, you can communicate it, you can substantiate it, and you can educate the injured worker first and foremost, then the insurance adjuster, and then the judge and the attorneys and everything else. We're just going to have a much more reasonable place to start a settlement report on. You really can't have a productive discussion or a mediation on settlement when one report says 5 and the other one says 75. I mean, something is wrong in between these reports. And unless you have the tools that we've talked about, understanding the quality of the data, the completeness of the data, what's missing in the data, the calculations, how were they done? And did we really do a good job on figuring out Alvarez-Guzman? Was there more functional loss reported and documented by the patient's subjective than what was really communicated in the objective, and all of the colors in between that. So the whole point is, and this is just sort of a summary talk, if you don't have a solid impairment report, if you don't understand why the value is what the value is, and you don't understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the report, you're really in not a very good situation or place to start a discussion about settlement. And the whole point is that the workers' compensation system is already very slow. It's glacial. It's deeply bureaucratic. And it takes months and years sometimes to settle cases. And a lot of the problems settle around the administrative benefits. How much money are you going to be paid? What's your future care look like? And we've talked about this all before. But again, if you have an understanding, if you have literacy in understanding how to read and what goes into an impairment report, you are going to be in a great position to not only start your settlement, but to know where the settlement really should be, plus minus 10%. So I hope that's helpful. I hope I've given you some things to think about. I want you to think about settling cases, what you need going into a settlement, how you need to understand the foundational impairment report on which all of the permanent disability will be decided. Dr. John Alchemy with RateFast. It's been great talking to you.